Hard-boiled eggs are reliable and delicious, but if you're not careful, your leftovers might explode. Think you know hard-boiled eggs? Think again. Raw eggs are surprisingly resilient. According to United States Department of Agriculture regulations, the sell-by date on a carton of eggs can't exceed 30 days after the packaging date. Nevertheless, it's also true that eggs can safely be hard-boiled even if they're 5 weeks old and past their official expiration date. To help them go the distance, the USDA recommends sticking your eggs in the refrigerator as soon as you get home from the grocery store. They should then be kept in their original carton and away from the fridge door, as this area experiences frequent temperature fluctuations. While it may seem counterintuitive, many people prefer hard-boiling older eggs since they're easier to peel. In newly laid eggs, the egg whites stick to the shell due to a low pH level or acidity. As an egg ages, its shell becomes more porous, which leads to the absorption of air and the release of carbon dioxide. This in turn increases the egg white's acidity, thereby reducing its adherence to the shell. In addition, egg whites tend to shrink with time, which results in more air between the whites and the shell, which also makes older eggs easier to peel. Boiling eggs in a saucepan is the most common method for making hard-boiled eggs, but it's not the only one. One other option is the use of an Instant Pot. With this method, you should follow the rule of 5s, in which you allow your pressure cooker 5 minutes to heat up, 5 minutes to cook the eggs, and 5 minutes to release pressure. You can also hard-boil eggs without water by using an air fryer. Simply preheat it to 266 degrees Fahrenheit, place the eggs in the basket, and cook them for 15 minutes. Another waterless method includes popping the eggs in the oven. For best results, preheat it to 325 degrees Fahrenheit, place the eggs inside the oven in a muffin tray, and let them cook for 30 minutes. More adventurous home chefs can even try to boil their eggs in a coffee maker. To get the job done, place them in the glass coffee pot, fill the coffee maker's reservoir with water, and turn the machine on. Let the hot water percolate over the eggs, and once they're immersed in water, let them rest for 10 to 12 minutes. While some egg enthusiasts swear that pricking the larger end of an egg with a thumbtack prior to boiling is a sure way to stop the shell from cracking, this method is dubious at best. The reasoning behind this practice is based on the idea that creating a tiny hole in the shell allows the egg's gases to escape, thereby relieving pressure and helping keep the shell intact in boiling water. Piercing the shell is also said to let in a little water underneath, which can make an egg easier to peel once it's hard-boiled. But this may actually do more harm than good. Unless the tack is entirely sterile, it could contaminate the egg with harmful bacteria. Furthermore, pricking an eggshell can actually create very tiny cracks, thus making the shell weaker and more prone to cracking.
Look out, it's gonna blow out!
Peeling hard-boiled eggs can be exasperating, so it's little wonder that home chefs have come up with plenty of ways to try to make it easier, such as by adding a little baking soda or salt to the water prior to boiling the eggs. Unfortunately, this doesn't seem to actually make much of a difference. Russ Parsons wrote in the Los Angeles Times about how he tried it out and found that it didn't make peeling any easier, and also that the baking soda actually imbued the eggs with an unpleasant sulfur smell. And as one person declared on Quora, "I have been cooking eggs for over 70 years and have tried many different additions to the cooking water in an attempt to ease the shell removal of fresh eggs. Salt, baking soda, vinegar. Bottom line, nothing really gave consistent, repeatable results. Old wives' tales." It's a well-known fact that consuming raw or undercooked eggs can lead to salmonella. Perhaps you believe that hard-boiling them makes it impossible to contract salmonella, but this actually couldn't be further from the truth. While cooking eggs at 160 degrees Fahrenheit does indeed kill bacteria, there's actually a bit more to it than that.
Oh, it's complicated.
First, there's the risk of undercooking your eggs. Even though the process of hard boiling does eliminate most bacteria, including salmonella, the trick lies in ensuring that the egg is cooked all the way through. If it isn't boiled for a sufficient amount of time, there's a risk that the center might not reach the necessary temperature to eradicate all harmful bacteria. Even if you do happen to kill all bacteria during boiling, improper storage of hard-boiled eggs can still lead to food poisoning. Hard-boiled eggs shouldn't be left at room temperature for longer than 2 hours, and they shouldn't be stored in the refrigerator for more than 7 days. And once they're peeled, they'll start developing bacteria after 3 days in the refrigerator. Some of the signs that your hard-boiled eggs should be trashed include a foul odor, black, brown, or green spots, and a slimy or powdery consistency. Hard-boiled eggs make for a delicious snack with a little salt and pepper or some mayonnaise, but that's not the only way to eat them. They can also serve as a versatile ingredient to add flavor and texture to a variety of dishes. So if you find yourself with too many hard-boiled eggs on your hands, you have a world of culinary possibilities at your fingertips. You could certainly enjoy some deviled eggs, which can be made by having hard-boiled eggs, removing the yolks, and mixing them with mayonnaise, mustard, and other seasonings. The mixture is then spooned back into the egg white halves. Another straightforward way to use leftover hard-boiled eggs is by making an egg salad. Simply mash the eggs with mayonnaise, mustard, and a touch of salt and pepper. You can then enjoy the egg salad as a sandwich filling, a dip for veggies, or on crackers. If you want to get really creative, you can try your hand at making pickled eggs. To begin, peel the hard-boiled eggs and place them in a jar. Cover them with brine made from a mixture of vinegar, water, sugar, salt, bay leaves, minced garlic, and red onion. You may also wish to infuse the concoction with some pickling spice. Keep the jar in the fridge for a few days to let the eggs absorb the flavors, and then enjoy.
We did it! Pickled eggs!
Despite its slightly menacing appearance, a greenish ring around the yolk of a hard-boiled egg is no cause for concern. This discoloration is caused by a chemical reaction between sulfur in the egg white and iron in the yolk. When eggs are overcooked, this reaction can produce ferrous sulfide, which manifests as a greenish hue on the yolk surface. A green ring can also be the result of boiling eggs in water with a high level of iron. While they're not harmful, greenish yolks can be visually unappealing. Luckily, preventing them is relatively simple. All it takes is making sure that you don't overcook the eggs. One way to do this is by simply placing your eggs in a pot with cold water and covering it with a lid. Bring the water to a boil and remove the pot from the heat. If the eggs are large, allow them to rest in the hot water for between 10 and 12 minutes. Adjust this time slightly for eggs of different sizes. After draining the hot water from the pot, refill it with cold water to stop the cooking process inside the shells. Whether hard-boiled, soft-boiled, or anywhere in between, eggs should never be left at room temperature for longer than 2 hours once they've been cooked. In the United States, raw eggs should also be placed in the refrigerator as soon as you get them home from the store, although this isn't necessarily the case everywhere in the world. In some European countries, eggs aren't washed prior to packaging, which means that they retain their protective coating and can be kept at room temperature. But in the US, regulations set by the Department of Agriculture dictate that eggs must undergo sanitization before packaging. This removes their protective coating, which means that they have to be stored in the refrigerator. Although hard-boiled eggs should never be kept at room temperature, they can be refrigerated for up to a week as long as they remain in their shells. They can't be stored for as long as their raw counterparts, since boiling removes the protective membrane, thereby making the eggs more susceptible to bacteria. If you store hard-boiled eggs in your refrigerator on a regular basis, there's an easy way to keep track of their freshness by simply labeling each shell with the egg's cooking date. Some people swear that the best way to tell whether an egg is hard-boiled is to check whether or not it floats in water. While it's true that some eggs float and others sink, the notion that all hard-boiled eggs float is a misconception. The reality is that both hard-boiled and raw eggs are just as likely to float or sink in water.
Things float because of density.
There are 3 main reasons why an egg might float in water. Since adding salt to water increases its density, an egg will float once the H2O reaches a specific level of salinity. Eggs with cracks in their shells also sometimes float in water. This is due to the loss of egg white, which reduces the egg's overall weight, making it more prone to floating. The presence of boiled egg white in the saucepan is a sure sign that one of the eggs didn't make it through the boiling process intact. The third reason why an egg might float in water is simply that it's past its prime. Every egg contains an air cell that expands over time. Once it reaches a certain size, the air pocket keeps the egg buoyant in water. If you find yourself with more hard-boiled eggs than you need, you can always freeze them for later use, although there's a bit of a trick to it. The truth is that hard-boiled egg whites don't freeze well. When thawed, they become tough, rubbery, and generally unappetizing. Luckily though, hard-boiled egg yolks can be easily frozen for later use. For best results, separate the hard-boiled yolks from the egg whites. Place the yolks in a sealable bag, removing as much air as possible before placing them in the freezer. Don't forget to label the bag with the freezing date, since hard-boiled yolks need to be used within 1 year of freezing. To thaw the yolks, transfer them from the freezer to the refrigerator, and they should be ready in about 8 hours. If time is of the essence, place the yolk bag in lukewarm water to defrost them. Reheating hard-boiled eggs isn't a problem as long as you know what you're doing. Those who say that this simply can't be done have probably attempted warming the eggs up in the microwave with disastrous results. This is because microwaves heat up the moisture within food rather than the food itself. When hard-boiled eggs are reheated in a microwave, the pressure within the egg white can build up and lead to an explosion, thereby causing a significant mess and potential burns. This can happen with both peeled and unpeeled hard-boiled eggs. Instead of using a microwave, place your leftover hard-boiled eggs in a heat-proof bowl or saucepan, pour boiling water over them, and then cover the pan with a lid. It should take about 10 minutes for the eggs to heat through. If you absolutely insist on reheating eggs in the microwave, place them in a microwave-safe dish filled with water. Once submerged, heat the eggs on medium in 1-minute increments until they reach the desired temperature.